Okay, so the last pass that I'm going to break down and talk about is the one that's actually slow mode at the end of the jam, which is pretty cool. The the pass the reason I want to talk about this pass isn't because it's slow mode at the end of the jam, is because so kid blocks in their wall and kind of playing some offense for me, um, and I the way that I use that positioning of her isn't really like, she doesn't do a big crazy move. She doesn't really move any bodies. She just becomes a barrier for them to have to deal with, and she kind of stops their lateral ability, which is I think it's really smart offense. And I also want to talk about it because the way that I use it is I still throw my juke. I still approach that formation the same way that I would if she wasn't there. I still throw a juke even though there's offense in there, and I don't try and take her space either. I use her as a sort of, she blocks their lateral ability to close the space, so I take that space that she's sort of creating in her positioning. What I find often when I'm jamming and when I see other jammers jamming is when your offense is in there, you have this real, you kind of forget that you're jamming and you just go, oh, my offense is there, okay, and you skate straight at them and you just try and take them their path, and you become very obvious because you're just following the movement of somebody who's already there ahead of you, and the formation gets kind of an easy ride because they can just kind of like move around that, and we're all drilled at doing that, dealing with offense, and moving ahead of it or moving behind it. And so that style of play is, well, it's really kind of, it's not smart for you to do that. It's I feel like there's a better use of your buddy that's in there. So the reason I want to break this pass down is because of the movement pattern that we do, where kid kind of stays where she is and then waits for me to juke, and then she starts to move, and then I take the space and I accelerate at that space as well. And then the sort of last part is I'm accelerating at the space. I read that the blocker is going to make contact, so I remove that contact by jumping. And again, that's something I do a lot. Doesn't necessarily work all the time, and this time it happened to work out for me. So it's good. It's great kind of style and movement to kind of jump out and take that sort of space away. And apex jumps is definitely one of my favorite things to do, but it's also kind of a risky move. The reason it worked in this scenario was due to the blocker's position being, they had their back to the line and they were therefore kind of closing it in quite a slow manner, so that I had the acceleration and I could get my first couple of steps in, so that I was already passing their hips as I took off for my jump. If that timing hadn't have happened in that way, and my first steps and my takeoff step was behind their hips, they would have caught me in the air, and that's when that doesn't work. Because when those kind of side-steppy jumps don't work for me is when I don't get that first step in already passing that player. So first of all, we're going to talk about the offense. So something that I really worked on a lot before champs was offense being amongst the formation as I was approaching with speed, and or even going into that formation when I was approaching. And something I sort of figured out in one of the sessions was that I actually prefer my blockers to be kind of up there and in there long before I make it to that wall formation. And the reason that I like that is because instead of having this idea that I'm going to follow my offense through, what I really want to be able to do is you just use them as a distraction, read what's happening with the pack, and then use my quick sort of acceleration and juking to sort of seal the deal, or kind of make the pass happen. And so the offense, it has a very different kind of role in that scenario, and it's really hard for my offense to kind of know how they're doing it or whether they're doing it right. And it was an interesting experience to kind of say to the blockers, no, I actually really want you to just go in there and do something, like just distract them, just try and move some bodies, and don't worry about me. I'm gonna respond and react to what's happening in front of me. And that's what's so great was that when I was approaching, I could see Kid was doing exactly that. She was in there, she was making them unsettled. She wasn't necessarily worried about me and my path, and she wasn't going to try and do some amazing, great in sync maneuver with me. She was just letting me do my thing, and she was just going to stop them from being able to do their thing. And so I kind of, I really like that pass, and it's not necessarily what I'm doing in that pass that I really like. It's actually what Kid's doing in that pass, and that really kind of smart setup of I'm just going to sit here and stop you from being able to close and move laterally, which is a really, really effective way of playing offense, I think, in that annoying way of just stopping them being able to make that lateral close the line kind of move, and then it's just about me throwing that juke into the track, accelerating to that space, so using that moment, but really kind of getting my feet under me, driving strides forwards, really, but then being able to read the body language of that blocker, knowing that's I'm not going to make it, understanding that, kind of recognizing that space that I have. I often have a rule of thumb as well for if I'm going to take the line in that sort of a scenario, in the position of the blocker and where they start from. So if I'm approaching and I'm going to take the line, and the blocker that's going to close that space, so that front player, is in lane 2, if they're at all in lane 1, then it's alarm bells. If they are, if their position is in lane 1 but to the very on the cusp of lane 1, lane 2, so the lane 1 being on the inside line, lane 2 being next to it, if they are like on that line of lane 1 and 2 where those two lanes meet, then I know I can make it, but it's going to be tight. If they are at all in lane 1, then I'm going to have to do something about their position. I'm going to have to throw some other kind of move, some other kind of juke. I'm going to have to throw my weight into the track to move them into lane 2 so I can take that first lane. So that's something I recognised, and I recognised that through watching my pals and my other jammers at training, when their success rate was on making that line run work, and when it wasn't, really was determined by that track positioning of that player that's going to close that line, that second layer that's going to come across and close that line. And actually in this scenario, it fits that description. The blocker is on that cusp of lane 2 and 1 as I'm making my run for the line, and so I recognized that sort of scenario, and I knew I had to really accelerate, like really go for it, continue to carry that momentum, and then I recognize how quickly they're closing and go for just jump in the air and hope for the best. And then the maneuver after that is really just determined by the shape of their body as they're coming in, because they've backed to the line, so I kind of have to curve my body around that, and then it's just a toe stop work, which I discussed in the last pass. So it's just that getting comfortable with that, planting the foot down, throwing the body into the track. And if you continue to watch the slow-mo, actually, you see as I kind of finish my turn and I'm running, I then kind of have to fight everything in my body to not fall off the track again, and I have to kind of really throw my body back into the track again. So there was a lot of things going against me in that pass, and it was I'm going to be honest and say there's a lot of luck involved in that one, and it was just a case of the approach and the positioning on the track that allowed me to actually keep running the line and not have to reset and come into the track. Okay, so when you're approaching and when you're doing any kind of drill with offense, play around with it. Play around with how you react to your offense and how you use them. Whether you can run the same side as them, whether you take the opposite side, whether you throw a juke alongside them playing offense, whether you take to contact first and then approach the offensive maneuver. I really love like not having to take any contact, and that pass was definitely ended up being one of those, and that was definitely due to my offensive player being in the right place at the right time. So that was the last pass that I'm going to break down. I hope you enjoyed this series of me rambling on about coaching and like how I train. I really enjoy breaking down scenarios, taking a moment of a game, breaking it down, taking a look at what we could have done differently, how I could have performed better there, or how stealing somebody else's as well. So this sort of talk that I'm doing about my own process, I look at other jammers and I look at what they're doing and I try and figure out what process they went through to get there, to get to that skill. So this is one way that I use the gifts that I see. This is specifically looking at myself, but these gifts are awesome. That we can see everything slowed down and rewatch it over and over and over again. So use them for your training. Get analytical about your game, and have fun with that like side of being analytical. Don't fear failure. Don't fear getting it wrong. Look at how you can get it right because you got it wrong. And I get it wrong all the time, and so that's how I figured out how to get it right some of the time. Now I just need to work on how to get it right most of the time instead of some of the time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.